I'd like to begin my homily on this feast of the most holy body and blood of Christ, not with talking about the Eucharist, but with talking about covenant. In all three of our readings this morning, we hear about covenant. And it's not really something that resonates with us readily. We don't really use that word. We don't have a sense of covenant, really. But it was central to the Jews' understanding of their relationship with God. The closest thing we really have is our understanding of marriage. And when I begin working with engaged couples, the first question I really ask them is, what is the difference between a contract and a covenant? Because we hear the phrase, the marriage contract, And so, since, for instance, I have a couple here that I married some years ago, they'll remember what they, right? But, and really, it's a simple but profound difference. A contract has, by its nature, whether it's a very simple one or a very intricate one, is simply a conditional agreement. I will do this if you do that. So if you pay me $500, I'll let you live in my apartment, with the understanding, right, because it's that kind of thing, it's a contract, that if you stop paying me the money, I can kick you out of my apartment. Or if I kick you out, you can stop paying me my money. And that's the nature of a contract. A covenant, on the other hand, is profoundly different because there's no condition to it. And I know marriage, our experience of marriage in the world, in the culture right now, is that it's breakable. So many marriages end in divorce. But I think even in the culture, experiencing the way many people live marriage, I think we still know in our heart that divorce isn't the intention of marriage, And the understanding or showing that marriage is a covenant can be seen in the words of the marriage rite. And so, for instance, the groom says, I, John, take you, Mary, to be my wife. Period. It's a declarative sentence. It's not a conditional phrase. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, period. He doesn't say, I, John, take you, Mary, to be my wife if you take me. He doesn't say, I promise to be true to you if you're true to me. I promise to love you if you love me. No, I promise to love you, period. And the wife, and then the bride says the same to the groom. And so, what I try to impress upon an engaged couple is that falling down or breaking the promise of one spouse does not change the promise of the other spouse. And so unfaithfulness on the part of one party in a marriage does not give permission to the other party to be unfaithful. And it's fundamental to the church's understanding of marriage because it comes from God's relationship that he established with his people, which was not a conditional thing, but a covenantal thing. And so in the covenant, when one made a covenant in ancient Israel, some animal was sacrificed for two reasons. One, that they would share part of that sacrifice as a meal. And a meal for the ancients was arguably more important than for us, although not always. But you didn't share meals with strangers. If you shared a meal with someone, it signified a familial relationship, a trust, a closeness, right? And then the blood was sprinkled on both parties, in effect to say, if I break my part of this covenant, let me die, let my blood be shed. That's how serious a covenant would be. And so God makes a covenant with us. But the sacrifice is his own Son. And so when we receive communion, we share this meal, so to speak, with God, signifying that we're no longer strangers, but family with God. We're adopted daughters and sons. And the blood, we share the blood in a sense. Not in the way before where they'd sprinkle some on the people and some on the altar. But we receive Jesus' body, and when we do that, we're renewing that covenant. This is the blood of the new covenant shed for you. And I think it's important for all of us to continue to try to understand the importance of receiving communion. Now, there are many aspects to it. I'm only speaking of one. But when we come up to receive the body and blood of Jesus in communion, we're not, if I can put it this way, just coming up to receive communion. We're renewing the covenant that we entered into with God at our baptism. It's one of the reasons why the church says if a Catholic is aware of mortal sin, he or she should not present themselves for communion. Because we understand mortal sin to break the relationship with God. And so to receive communion, to participate in the act that renews the covenant with God is not true. It's not reality. You can't be in covenant with someone with whom you've broken the relationship. And so the church says, if a Catholic is aware of serious sin, she or he should go to confession first and reestablish the relationship, and then celebrating the covenant, renewing the covenant makes sense. And again, it's one of the reasons, not the only one, but it's one of the reasons why we don't share communion with those who are non-Catholic. Because they are not fully in the covenant, if I can put it that way. And so, again, to participate in an act that renews a covenant that doesn't exist doesn't make sense. I want to share with you a line from Pope Benedict. I love these two sentences. I meditate on them periodically. He writes, "The hidden treasure is Jesus himself, the kingdom in person. In the sacred host, he is present, the true treasure," and this is my favorite part of it, "always waiting for us." And so if you think about it, anytime you come into a church, you find the sanctuary lamp burning, alerting you that Jesus is present, and he's here, always waiting for us, always faithful. It's the sign of his covenant with us, right? And so, no matter what we do, God is always waiting for us to return. And I know our experience of marriage, and many marriages are beautiful and good. Please don't misunderstand me. But the problem with marriages between two human beings, right, is that human beings fail. And it does matter what you do to the other person, right? Both it matters, your own act matters, but also you can, if you beat down on a person long enough, you can turn them away from you. You cannot with God. No matter what we do, all we have to do is turn around and say to God, God, I'm sorry, I want to be, and God's already there. He's already receiving us. Right? So never think you can turn God away from you. There's nothing you can do that would make God not be God for you. There's nothing you can do that could ever make God not want to be God for you. Right? God is always faithful to the covenant he has made with you. And when we receive communion, we renew that covenant, right? And so, on this feast of the most holy body and blood of Christ, we look beyond the bread and wine, look beyond the body and blood of Jesus, and see even the deeper reality, the covenant in which we exist with God.